Welcome back to the Brotagonists podcast. I'm your bro host, Mason.
And I'm your bro host, Carter. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back and listening to us ramble on once again here at the Brotagonists podcast. Mason, we have a fun one lined up. This is our first episode focused on a sequel to a book that we've already reviewed. And so if you haven't already read the title and kind of derived what it's about, this book is book number 2 in the Mistborn original trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. This book is called The Well of Ascension. And here's my copy right here. There's Mason's copy. There's the paperback. Here's my copy. I still look at this book and struggle to kind of understand what the background is. I think it's a bunch of dead Koloss, but I'm not sure.
It is a bunch of dead Koloss.
Okay. I just thought Koloss were bluer than that, if that makes sense. But got some dead Koloss, pretty ugly things. But as you can see, it's not really a children's book at this point. There's a lot of dead bodies there on that cover. Anyway, before we start off here, just a little intro to the episode. We are going over Well of Ascension. We are doing a couple games. We're doing a mythic matchup between Marsh of Mistborn and Moash of Stormlight Archive. And that segment will include some spoilers. And our book breakdown and review of The Well of Ascension will include some light spoilers of most definitely the first book of Mistborn, The Final Empire, but pretty light spoilers for The Well of Ascension. So if you're planning on reading these books, I would maybe skip this section onto the next part of our podcast. We're going to go on after the mythic matchup, and we're going to do some blind rankings. And that's a fun game that we like to play here. And then we will end off with a Weapon of Wisdom segment sponsored by Moe's Seafood and Chowder on the Oregon coast. We're twinning with the hats today. I love it. Truly, truly sponsored. So anyway, before we get too deep into these topics, Mason, what it's all about is our love for reading. And I want to know what you're reading right now.
Well, I have not made much progress since our last show. I'm still reading Howling Dark. Once again, it's an intense read. There's a lot going on. Every detail is important, and I don't want to miss anything. So I'm really wanting to give it 100% of my attention. And
Fair enough. Fair enough.
what are you
Before we
reading?
What I'm reading right now is a throwback to my childhood with Levin Thumps and the Gateway to Foo. I'm sprinkling these books in between some other books I'm reading, and this is a children's series, a little bit younger than Harry Potter even. It's kind of along the lines of Fablehaven or 13th Reality, but I always think about this book, the Levin Thumps and the Gateway to Foo. There's 5 of them. Like I said, I'm on the 3rd one. And it's just kind of for nostalgia, kind of a palate cleanser because I've already listened to it. It's been in my head for, 20 plus years. So it's nice to just, revisit the childhood sometimes, even as a 30-year-old adult.
Oh, we're getting old.
I know. Hey, you're about to join me. You're about to join me, 29-year-old.
Yeah, feels like I'm already 30. The back's going. Everything hurts.
It's true. I saw my favorite meme that I saw this week. Ever since we did the Avatar: The Last Airbender episode, I've been getting a lot of memes for Avatar, and my favorite one was it was Aang taking away the bending of Firelord Ozai. Firelord Ozai's like, "What are you doing?" And it shows Aang, and it says knees, like Aang is knees. It's like, I'm taking away your bending or something like that.
Each year, getting a depth for squat gets harder and harder.
Dude, squats, at least bar squats, I might be coming to the end of my career for those. They're just, I don't know. I almost like belt squats or just goblet squats better on my knees.
I'll do front squats as well. Yeah, all these exercises that are super fundamental to getting jacked, to being healthy and building muscle, squats, deadlifts. I just hate them now. I was like, when I'm good about going to the gym, like I hate that I have to do stuff I don't like at the gym, like 3 of the days a week.
Oh boy, my sister was trying to tell me that bar bench presses are bad for your shoulders, but I refuse to acquiesce that workout.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no one ever asks, like, hey, how much do you belt squat? They always just ask, like, hey, how much do you bench? You gotta be able to have a good number to show that off.
Mason, how much do you bench right now?
I benched 315 for a set of 5 the other day. So
Dang.
I haven't done like a I got to 360 last year. I doubt I'm there anymore. I'm probably more like at 330, 340 right now.
350, 360, 370.
I wanted to get to 405 by the end of this year. This year, I don't think I have done like any of my goals are it's been a terrible start to my year for as far as my productivity with anything anywhere.
Do I have to break 300 in bench to get a chain?
Yeah, it's one of the rules that if you don't wear a chain, if you don't bench over 300 pounds and you wear a chain, it's just a necklace. You can't say it's a chain.
I gotcha. Fair enough, fair enough. I have a little ways to go then. Oh boy, that's funny. Well, Mason, to get into our book breakdown, would you give us our synopsis, please?
Yeah. And remember, folks, there's going to be some spoilers in here, especially from the first book of the Mistborn trilogy. So this is the time to skip ahead if you're wanting to read this series and don't want any spoilers. If you have read it or think you might not read it but want to listen in, stay tuned and we'll have a good conversation for you. So, to summarize kind of the plot of the Well of Ascension following the Final Empire, after throwing the Lord Ruler in Mistborn, the Final Empire, Vin, Elend, and their crew are left trying to actually govern the Final Empire, and it turns out it's way harder than toppling it. Elend becomes king of Luthadel and tries to build a more just democratic system, but he's immediately threatened by multiple invading armies and political instability from within. Meanwhile, Vin struggles with her identity, torn between being a weapon, a misborn assassin, and a person capable of love and trust. As tensions rise, the crew searches for the mysterious Well of Ascension, believing it holds the power to save or doom the world. Vin eventually reaches it and makes a critical choice. Instead of using its power, she releases it, unknowingly fearing a far more dangerous force. The book ends with the Empire barely surviving the siege, but a real threat has just been unleashed.
That was a lot of information, but it does a good job at giving you kind of the outline of the book. I really loved this book.
I really, really enjoyed it too. I think that it gives perspective to how hard it is to actually govern something. And even like Ellen, who most people would probably agree would be a good ruler and has good ideas, is there's always someone there to try to cut down your good ideas and say that they can do it better.
Yeah.
So I thought like the political instability was kind of a unique part of this book that I haven't really seen taken on in an atmosphere like this with not a dark court, but like a actual Congress debating things.
Yeah. This is a politics book disguised as fantasy. It's, way less heist than the first book and way more governance. It explores, like what happens after revolution and there's fun things that can be explored in this next kind of stage of the series. And Elend he becomes such an interesting character, Elend Venture in this second installment of the Mistborn trilogy. I like the exploration of his kind of idealism versus reality, and how Vin is kind of much more, ear to the ground. She just is expecting something to go wrong, and Elend is just, uh, you know, idealist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the relationship between Elend and Vin is kind of interesting in this book, and I love that we add in kind of a third party, not to like their relationship, but a competing force against Elend for the affection of Vin in Zane. And I think the only reason why Vin entertains Zane is because she feels that she's not worthy of someone like Elend, who is the idealist, who is such a good man, wanting to do the right things, has good ideas, smart, wealthy, and has everything you really could ever want in a man. Yeah. So Vin has this guy that is really what every girl would really want on paper, but she feels that because of who she is and the kind of the weapon that she is, that she's not really capable of love, or love isn't in the cards for her, and sees Zane, another Mistborn, as a potential option for.
Yeah, and I don't know, were you ever rooting for Zane in that love triangle, kinda?
No, this is like the typical story where everyone's looking at her entertaining the idea of Zane and being like, "Are you stupid? What's wrong with you?" Like, this is like the only part of this book that reads kind of like the teenage girl that we get in the Fourth Wing, where it's like, "We're both Mistborn. Maybe we could be together."
Until
I'm
you
gonna go
kind of
for this
realize,
bad boy, even though I have this perfect guy that just loves me for me.
yeah, but in his own way, he kind of is a good match for her. But that's what it's supposed to do. The love triangle is supposed to make you think for a second. But Elland is the perfect guy. I thought in the first book that he was going to turn out to be a kind of a betrayer, but he wasn't. He proved himself to be a good guy. But in this book, he kind of starts as a naive philosopher king, and he kind of, he gets crushed by real world leadership pressure, and he's forced to harden and make brutal decisions. And his story arc, I think it's underrated. He's so cool too in the third book. When you get through this book, his kind of like transformation, his arc more than anybody else in the series is really the three stages of the butterfly, right? He's really just like a caterpillar in the first book, and now he's in his cocoon in this book, and you're like, what's this guy gonna end up with, being? And really, really blossoms into a butterfly in the third book. And I think because of him, the ending of this trilogy is one of the best ever written.
Yeah, I agree. I think the growth of him is realistic because of all that he goes through in this book, in his development, in his relationship with Vin, and he gets a tutor in Tyndall,
Tyndall.
and she just wrecks him, tells him everything he's doing wrong, and she's like, "No, like, you're good, like, you are the best. You need to actually act and believe that you're the best." Completely tears him down so that he can, like, build up to the warrior, philosopher, king that he is in book 3.
And before we move on from Elland, do you think he is weak in this book, or is he actually the strongest character because he chooses responsibility?
I wouldn't say weak, but he shows a lot of integrity in this books, and people opposing him admit, like, he has got a lot of integrity and a lot of honesty to him. I would say naive is the better word, where when you're in this situation and you're the best option, you need to act like you're the best option and not just, "Oh, yeah, we could just go with the flow of what everyone wants," you know?
So moving on a little bit to Vin in this book, in the first book, obviously Vin is the main protagonist. In the first book, I felt like her arc was so external, like with her powers, and yeah, there was their growth inside here. But in this book, it's a little deeper. Her arc, it's not as obvious, but it is deeper. It's a little quieter, but she really kind of starts to turn into the person that she needs to be to confront the evil in the third book.
Yeah, I think it's not until, like, the very end of Mistborn: The Final Empire that Vin really starts getting kind of an emotional change to her. I think one of the most profound moments of the Final Empire is before Kelsier leaves her to fight the Inquisitor and the Lord Ruler and eventually perish. He says, "Vin, you have a lot to learn about friendship."
Mm.
And goes off and sacrifices himself so that he can save his friends. And I think Vin is just from a world where that's not a reality, and it's constantly taking reminders that this is your new reality. You're part of this gang that they're all together and they do everything for each other. And that people that love each other do this for each other, and that your life isn't your abusive mother or your abusive brother or your non present father, but there's people there that love you and care about you. And Vin growing to accept that is something that's so hard for her and she just can't accept, but she just needs to get there for her own personal development. That's a huge part of this book.
Yeah, and because she got so powerful so fast and her childhood was so much trauma, she really is struggling between, you know, an identity crisis in this book. Assassin versus human, power versus vulnerability, independence versus trust, especially with Ellen. Vin is someone that can destroy armies, but she just doesn't quite know how to be a person, and that's what she's kind of struggling with. And it's cool. It's a completely different book than the first book.
Kind of switching gears here, getting away from the characters. Something I really loved about this book was Tensoon and the Khandra.
Hmm.
Like,
I was gonna
that
say
was a plot twist
Tensoon.
I did not see coming.
I was gonna say Tensoon was my favorite character of the book, even though a little some spoilers around him, but he's a great character, especially going on into the third book.
but I learning what the Khandra are and how they operate is so unique. Like, basically a shapeshifter that has like a written contract that they take on to basically impersonate people and things is, and to be spies is so clever. And how they are utilized in the series is actually so interesting. And that Vin uses one to have a dog with her is really clever, and I thought Tensoon was a fun addition, and I agree, like, that in book 3, it gets even better. Hero of Ages is just by far the best book of the series and is just amazing, but I really liked this Well of Ascension as well.
Yeah. I know they describe her Conjure dog as just a big greyhound, right? Or
Yeah, like a big
wolfhound,
shaggy dog.
like a big wolfhound. But I like to imagine him even bigger, like double that size, just because it's more fun. Kind of like Jacob as a werewolf, like that kind of size.
I Have you ever seen an Irish wolfhound?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that's how I imagine Tensoon,
Have you seen one in person?
not in person.
I took a picture with one. It was bigger than me, huge. His name was Claude. I saw him actually in Ireland, so he was authentic. And then he had a sister named Oscar because it was a tradition that the castle had to have a wolfhound named Oscar. So that's felt to hurt. But more about this book, The Siege of Luthadel. You have any thoughts on that?
So the siege part of the siege, it got a little tiresome for me where it was
Took a long time.
took a long time, and I liked the political atmosphere, but at the same time, I think it was a little too much. Just like this needed to be cut back 10 to 15% and we're good. But it was a lot of political debate within the city, negotiations without the city, dealing with the political implications of every little thing, each opposing force that shows up because there's more than one. And that it just got tiresome. But like the actual kind of climax, the action scenes of the Koloss showing up because of Jastes and Strath Venture, Ellen's father, being another driving force. Once it all got started and the stakes became real, and Vin isn't there initially to save the day, and she has to come back to save the fight. It was epic. It was a good siege battle that we got to read.
Yeah. I do think the siege was slightly long, but you got to admit, it did create slow burn tension. It allowed for that atmosphere to turn into big explosive moments. And but the entire book kind of felt like it was a ticking clock with no release until the very end. But
Did
that's what the Sanderlanche is all about.
I will say that I thought it was crazy how Vin shows up to the fight with a Koloss sword and literally cuts Strathventure in half vertically.
There's the sword right there, just
Yeah, it's
huge.
huge. But literally, she splits her boyfriend's father in half. Like, that's so crazy.
That is crazy. Hmm.
Was there anything that you didn't like or that you would have changed?
Just that, like you said, it drags a little in the middle because it is a change of pace from the first book because the pacing of the first book is so, next, quick. But I thought it was important, and it might have been the most important book of the trilogy just to connect the events of the first one to the third one. I do think that I'd rather read the first one and the third one over this. If I was just going to choose one, I'd choose the first or the third. But this one is really important. And critiques, yeah, I mean, it was just a very different feel. You know what I mean? What about you?
I think they got progressively better. I do kind of understand what you're saying because the ending is perfect. Like such a good third book. And the first one is, the start, you're getting introduced to the whole crew. It's just different. But I do think that this is a better book than Final Fantasy. Really liked it.
I have a
I don't
question.
think there's anything big I didn't like other than I think the politics just got to be a little bit
I have a question. I have a couple questions for you.
okay.
Would you rather have Elend as a leader or Kelsier?
Ellen.
Did Vin make the right call at the well?
Yes and no. Where she had the right intentions, where she thought she had to let the power go, but didn't realize what was happening. So it was the wrong choice because she unleashed Ruin, who has been the main villain this whole time behind the shadows. But she just doesn't know. But she had all the right intentions and thought that she was given the correct information to make her choice, and she let the power go and did not realize that she was releasing literally the god ruin into the world to possess and cause havoc and destroy the world.
Did you trust the voice?
No, of course not. Even in the wizarding world, hearing voices isn't a good thing.
That
Did
was
you ever test the voice?
I did. I want it. Dude, I'm such a sucker for twists. I'm such a sucker for twists, man. And the whole time I thought that I don't know. I I think it got me, man. I think the twist got me. And, this book has some twists in it. As far as twists go, this book has got some good ones. And I know we're spoiling a little bit, but it's got some good twists. But if you go into it like me, knowing there's twists, like I basically know there's a twist in every book, but it still gets me every time.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
But a couple more questions I have for you. Do you think democracy is actually viable in that world?
In that world? Well, to be honest, if we're doing like a true, I don't know about a true democracy. It'd have to be like such a small community because in a true democracy, every person gets to vote on every single circumstance. Where most are republics, like us in the United States, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. We elect our leaders, and our leaders vote on behalf of us. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's really bad.
For democracy.
And I don't know if like a true democracy is actually ever viable in anything but a small town. And in a big city, in a world like this, and in these circumstances, you almost needed Ellen to just be the king and just to run things so things can get done and be accomplished. And I don't think that's moral or the ideal. Sometimes you got to make things happen and know you're the best person for the job.
Yeah, he should have just made the decision, like set up the democracy later on, like when things are like settled, you know what I mean? But yeah. Another question I was thinking about when I was thinking about the characters and the stories and stuff. Do you think that Zane added anything, or do you think he was unnecessary to the story?
I think he just added a little bit of romantic drama in there.
Yeah.
But as far as like the story, no, like there's absolutely nothing that Zane added to this book other than it was just like an emotional thing for Vin.
Yeah.
And
I think it was also a misdirection. I think it was also a misdirection for us with some of the twists that happened later on. And it was kind of fun to see how crazy he was with his dad. Like he's just insane. I like how he's always trying to kill his dad.
I do think that he did add something. There was something with the powers and the metals that Vin figured out through her fight with him. But I can't
Yeah,
remember what it is because it's been too long since I've read it.
that's right. I need to reread it. And do you think this, have you reread this book at all?
I don't know if I've reread this one. I don't even know
I
if
would,
I've reread The Final Empire.
my question for both of us is this book better on a reread than the first read? I think probably not, because I think it's so fun to have surprises, but I do think after so long, I think it's been at least 4 years, that it would be fun to reread it.
Yeah, it's a series I definitely need to reread again. I could see it being one of those. I don't know if you have as much like entertainment as the first time, but you always gain more appreciation from like those things that you love that you watch over again. Whenever I rewatch the Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter's or Pirates of the Caribbean, I find stuff that I missed the first time. It's like, oh wow, that's actually super cool.
Yeah. This book is good. I like how the enemy is kind of outside the walls, but really it's like the true enemy are the choices being made inside the walls, and I think that's a good metaphor for life even. That's a good weapon of wisdom in the middle of our podcast episode. But yeah, this is where Mistborn stops being fun and starts being serious. Like, we showed all the dead Koloss on the front of the cover, and that's pretty cool at the end. Pretty cool battle.
All right, let's get to it. What did you rank this book?
I ranked this book. I didn't even come up with one yet. I didn't write it down.
What does Goodreads have it at?
Okay. Actually, let me ask you first. Mason, let's get to the ranking of the book. What did you rank this book?
So I ranked this book higher than Mistborn 1, The Final Empire. I ranked this book an 8.6.
8.6. Because we had a Brotagonists ranking of 8.4 for Mistborn, the
Yeah,
Final
we were
Empire.
both the exact same.
8.6. All right. Goodreads has this book at an 8.7.
I think that's very astute.
I don't have a problem with your ranking, but Do I think it's better than Shadow of the Gods? I cannot say I do.
I would say that I think that I thought Final Empire and Shadow of the Gods were pretty close, but I would rank this one above Shadow of the Gods by a pretty clear margin.
Would you rank The Hunger of the Gods above Shadow of the Gods?
Hunger of the Gods is the second one, right? Yes.
Yes. Okay. Then knowing that, I can get on board with your 8.6 for the Well of Ascension.
There you have it, folks. The official protagonist ranking for uh, Mistborn, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson is 8.6. Well deserved.
Great book. Read Mistborn: The Final Empire and get to this book. It's worth it.
Very
And
worth.
it's not even compared to the third book. The third book is so good. Better than these two. And that brings us to our mythic matchup this week between Marsh, Kelsier's brother in the Mistborn series. To refresh your memory, listeners that have read these books, and to give you a kind of a visual to the listeners and watchers that have not read these books, Marsh is a guy that gets his allomantic powers from hemalurgy. He basically has metal driven into his body that basically holds powers taken from, how would you describe it?
So in the Mistborn world, all the Allomancers are people that can use the metals to burn them in their bodies to have these powers. You can steal them by driving these nails through that person into another person with their blood in the metal, and it goes into their bodies like the Inquisitors. It gives them all the abilities that would come from these people. And
Yeah, and I
Marsh,
think,
by book 3, has like 20 of these spikes driven through his body.
each one has to be driven into specific spots to
Yes.
achieve the desired effect. So it's kind of a difficult practice, I guess. But Marsh is kind of like the most powerful Inquisitor by book 3. And so he's also being controlled by Ruin through the hemalurgic spikes. But yeah, Marsh has almost all the powers of a Mistborn, but through hemalurgy instead, right?
Yeah, so I believe he has all the powers of a Mistborn and some of a feruchemist.
This mythic matchup is between Marsh, Iron Eyes in Mistborn Era 1 and beyond, and Moash of the Stormlight Archive. Pretty much considered one of the most despised characters of the series, if not the most despised character of Stormlight. And I will be defending or vying for Moash, who has his own set of abilities and powers by now. And Mason will be defending Marsh, Iron Eyes of Mistborn.
That's right. One of my favorite characters from the Mistborn trilogy. So
The images of Marsh are frightening, I will say. I'm looking at them right now.
he has spikes for eyes and they go on the back of his head. He's terrifying.
So I'll pass it off to you to start off here. Why do you think Marsh is going to beat Moash in a duel?
Well, what we're really comparing here is an Allomancer of some kind versus a Surge Binder. And really, Moash is going to be limited to 3-ish abilities and his ability to use his Honor Blade. Marsh has way more abilities, and one of those abilities is to see slightly into the future with if he were to get a spike of
Atium.
Atium. And that would be crazy to use. Because of Marsh's ability to push and pull metals, he could launch himself into the air really fast. He can shoot things at Moash. He can deflect. I don't know how the Allomancy would affect the steel of a shard blade or an honor blade. I'm guessing it wouldn't be the same and would not affect it. But I just think that Marsh, because he has so many more abilities and just all the repertoire he has as a Steel Inquisitor and the intimidation factor of just how scary he looks, I think he's got him.
Okay, those are all very good points, Mason. Let me start by giving you all Marsh's weaknesses, and then I'm going to go into why Moash is going to take him in a duel. You mentioned his strengths, metal this, metal that, but he's reliant on metal. He needs nearby metal for mobility and offense.
But it's in his body.
Okay, that brings me to my next point. It's usually not an issue, to be fair. But that brings me to my next point, is the spikes are actually a vulnerability. They can be theoretically exploited and removed, losing powers that he's been depending on. So his instincts, he's trained to use them, take away a spike, that thing's gone. But what do I do now? Change strategy. He's less agile than Radiance, maybe slightly, just slightly. I know that he might have some enhanced speed and strength, but not as fluid as a Surge Binder in motion, I would think. Let's get into Moash a little bit. Moash has Windrunner training. He's an elite spear fighter trained against Kaladin Stormblessed, your favorite character ever. You can't deny that that Kaladin has trained him to be as sharp as the tip of a spear. He knows his lashings. He's a Surge Binder. Let's see, he has Odium's gift of emotional suppression. So there's no hesitation, no guilt. He's going for the kill immediately. And with a Shard Blade, literally cannot be parried by anything by anything Marsh has. So I wish Marsh luck in avoiding the Shard Blade. But I admit that Marsh is a formidable opponent, and I would have been happy to defend Marsh on my own. But I actually think the more I get into this, that Moash has has the edge here. And it also, I've been thinking about the opponents that they go up against in their respective series. And Moash is fighting much more difficult opponents, in my opinion. He is going up against he goes up against multiple Surge Binders. He's training with Fused, and he's a god's like main weapon, just like Marsh's kind of Ruin's weapon. Moash is kind of Odium's, one of Odium's main weapons here. And I would say Odium is a more powerful god than Ruin.
Let me ask you, and I'm very curious as to what your answer is. Which do you think is the more powerful system? The Surge Binding that the Knights Radiant use, or the Feruchemists and Allomancers?
Well, I think Mistborn are more powerful, but I think Allomancers and Feruchemists in general are not. Do you think that's fair?
I would say that is fair, but I would also argue that a Steel Inquisitor is more powerful than a Mistborn.
I would maybe agree with you there that they are more powerful in that they have more powers, but I wouldn't say that all of their powers combined equal the kind of unavoidable edge of a Shard Blade and Stormlight powering the wielder of the Shard Blade.
I would argue that the Feruchemists are faster. I believe that it might not be as graceful or as smooth moving that like the Radiants have, but I believe that Marsh should probably be the faster of the two. And because with the Allomantic powers, Marsh could theoretically see into the future of what Moash is trying to do with the Shard Blade and avoid it.
Yeah,
I will agree that Moash, compared to Marsh, is more trained for war, is probably a better warrior, and without that edge, Marsh is probably cooked, but with the edge of Atium, kind of got to give it to him.
I agree with you there. No power can beat Atium. And so if there's Atium involved, I think Marsh wins this duel. You got me there. But without Atium, the most rare substance in the world, especially in Era 2, there's no chance. Well, there's a chance, just not the edge.
There is a really important question we need to ask ourselves, and I might have been arguing for a second just to make myself look stupid. Can the Inquisitors actually use Atium? Because I'm drawing a blank on any moment that they used it.
Are they
I would think that they could, because you could steal that ability.
Well,
but
they'd need a spike of Atium, wouldn't they? Because aren't the spikes made of the metal that is burned, or is that not true?
I think it depends.
I think we need to ask Brandon, Mr. Sanderson, Professor, please come on our podcast and answer our questions about Steel Inquisitors.
For the sakes of this argument, let's say that he can use it, but there's a limited amount, because that's how all the other Mistborns are, is it's a rare metal that they do not have a lot of.
I think all you need is, to choose your timing with it. And all you need is to burn it for 3 to 5 seconds, and your Moash could be done for. I mean, seeing the future, is there any better power?
So, spoilers ahead. In Stormlight 5, Wind and Truth, Moash gets some spikes through his eyes as well. His are different. They're the Odium spikes, but have those granted him any abilities that the Windrunners don't have that he gets from his honor blade? I didn't see any in the book, but he was not in there a ton.
Why did he get spikes in the first place?
Remember, he got blinded in Rhythm of War, and he couldn't see, and that was a way of adding that was there for him to see. But I'm imagining that they have something else to him. It might be a way for Odium to control him.
Do we know which metal is Odium's metal?
I don't even know if they were metal. He said they were kind of like a purple, marbly type thing.
There's a lot that we don't know. There's always
Yeah,
more secrets.
there is always more secrets. And I think that, major spoilers ahead for book 3 of Mistborn, Hero of Ages, is that Ruined Body was Atium, like the Atium stash that the Khandra had, and his god metal, and Preservations was the metal to make Mistborns that was at the Well of Ascension. And I'm pretty sure the bodies of Odium and Honor might be the light that's there. But I could be wrong. I could have a complete misunderstanding.
Well, I thought that light comes from the spiritual realm, and then the metal would have to be in probably the physical realm, because every god
The-
should have a light, and every god should have a metal, shouldn't they?
you
Because
know,
there's 16 metals, and there's all 3 gods. Even Odium, who came to Roshar, had a metal. I mean, had a light. So theoretically, it's the world that determines kind of what part of the god is fueling the
yeah.
magic system. Does that make
No,
sense?
you're right. You're right.
So I would think that I'd think there's 16 types of light and 16 types of metal, theoretically, if those gods visited those planets.
So bringing this back to our argument, does Moash's spikes add any advantage in this fight against Marsh?
I don't know. It's hard to say what his secretive powers are. I think not, since we obviously don't know and we're big fans of the series. So maybe not. But it did seem like he could see things that he couldn't see before. So I would just say maybe his eyesight's better. I mean, I think if you bring A-Team into it, it's just like no chance for anybody.
That's some homework we'll have to do. If anyone knows, can Steel Inquisitors use ATM? Because if they can, Marsh has got this in the bag.
That's the question. Because then he could avoid a shard blade strike and get around and kill Moash. But otherwise, I think a shard blade is just too goated, man. I think you can't get by it. You can't fight a shard blade without something to counter it.
And especially because Moash is trained so well and is so good with being a soldier and fighting, where Marsh isn't really like that. He's not really a fighter. He got taken over by Ruin into what he is, and which is sad. But
And
I
Kaladin,
think we have the answer with ATM. It's Marsh all day, every day. Without, it's probably usually going to be Moash. 7 out of 10 times it gets the win.
fair enough. Fair enough. We'll do some research and get
Yeah.
back to
Also,
it.
this is a hard one to keep straight. Moash and Marsh are 2 similar names.
I know that was my problem. I was like thinking which name to say, and kept saying maybe the wrong one. That was fun.
All right, that brings us to our blind ranking segment, where Carter is going to give me some blind rankings.
That's right. Usually we do blind rankings of sets of 5, but today's blind rankings is a set of 7. And Mason, you're going to rank 7 Brandon Sanderson novels, 1 through 7, 1 being the best, 7 being the worst, and we'll see what you think at the
Is
end.
this just Cosmere, or is it all of his books?
We will say Cosmere. Okay, 1 through 7. First book, Mistborn, The Final Empire.
I'm going to give that a solid 5.
Right. The Way of Kings.
Way of Kings, I'll give 4.
Next up, Words of Radiance.
Now you got me, because there's only like 1 or 2 I'd rank above this. I'm putting it at number 2, Words of Radiance.
Fair enough. I think that's a good spot. Next up, we have Oathbringer.
Oathbringer, that's a solid number 3.
I think you're doing pretty well. Next up, we have Warbreaker.
This isn't where I'd put it, but just based on Warbreaker's about as good as Final Empire. I'd probably put that at 6.
Warbreaker. Next up, The Hero of Ages.
But you're probably gonna get me with the last one. Hero of Ages. It can't be number 7, so I have to put it at number 1.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to say can't be number 1. Okay, yeah, totally agree there. Okay, your number 7 is The Well of Ascension. How do you feel about that list?
To be honest, overall, it's pretty good. I'd probably just flip Final Empire and Well of Ascension.
Yeah.
Oathbringer and Final Empire are pretty good. Man, you this is one where you put all, I guess, the whole Cosmere is pretty good. But I was like, you put like all good books in here.
Yeah, I know. I only did one that was non-Mistborn, non-Stormlight. I thought that might throw you off a little bit.
Warbreaker is a really solid standalone and a really good middle ground one. But I think like Final Empire and Warbreaker are very close. Some of my
Yeah.
favorite books.
Yeah. I had, okay, well, for those of you listening, Mason had Hero of Ages at number 1, Words of Radiance at number 2, Oathbringer at number 3, Way of Kings at number 4, Final Empire at number 5, Warbreaker at number 6, and Well of Ascension at number 7. And his only critique would be switching Final Empire and the Well of Ascension 5 and 7. Overall, pretty good if you only have one switch.
How would you have ranked these?
I ranked personally, Oathbringer, Words of Radiance, The Hero of Ages, The Way of Kings, The Well of Ascension, The Final Empire, Warbreaker.
Warbreaker and last, huh?
Well, I just think, yeah, I think so. I actually liked,
Respectable
I,
list.
I like Elantris better than Warbreaker. Hot
Really?
take.
Elantris, it was still a good book, but might be my least favorite book in the Cosmere. Not my least favorite Sanderson book, though. Frugal
It was,
Wizard has that place.
Elantris was just so kind of like a little bit depressing and kind of had this dark feel to it. It felt like there was no hope at times. And it was a different tone that was a nice switch up from, I think I read it after Mistborn.
All
But
right, the fun rankings. I love talking to these books. And that brings us to our Watchtower review, where Carter and I are going to discuss what would it take basically to make Mistborn the success of Lord of the Rings in their trilogy. And something very similar that they have the books are probably not page wise, but word count is probably very similar between the Lord of the Rings novels and the Mistborns. And I feel like overall, the Lord of the Rings movies were able to get most of everything you could want into the movie and have the audience enjoy the adaptation. And I would love to see something similar with Mistborn. How can they do that?
I think it goes back to last week's episode when we were talking about how they should have made the Wheel of Time into a successful TV series. I think it has so much to do with going all in and taking those first steps to do it right, like having the author of the book be super involved with the movie and let them kind of have final say on what lore and, what parts of the story are crucial to the adaptation and what parts of the story, can have more of an artistic take in the adaptation. But I think having the author heavily involved is super important, just like J.K. Rowling was with Harry Potter. And that's step one. What do you think?
I agree. I think having Brandon involved would be very helpful and staying true to the identity of these books. I think another big thing is going to be casting, where I really feel that the Lord of the Rings knocked it out of the park with their casting, where you read the books and you think of the characters that they cast, and you say, yep, that's Frodo, that's Aragorn, that's Gandalf, that's Saruman. They did such a good job of having it all go there, and everyone did such a good job, and everyone involved in the Lord of the Rings loves Lord of the Rings. Like, they're into it. I don't like that in a lot of these other kind of series or cinematic universes, the actors could not care less about the product that they're making for their fans. And it just leaves like a sour taste in your mouth, where I want the actors in this to be as invested in this as I am. That's why I think I really resonate with Henry Cavill and some of the roles that he takes on.
I learned today, not to go against your point right away, but what I learned today is that Elijah Wood has not read Lord of the Rings.
He hasn't, but he loves Lord of the, like, he brought home Sting. He has the ring still. He's went back for the Hobbits. He answers Lord of the Rings questions all the time.
I find it incredible, though, that he has not. Like, he had to read all the scripts over and over again. You just read the books. It's crazy. But you're right.
If he's not a reader, he might just feel the way a lot of us feel like when before tackling a series that you've already seen the shows. It's like, I already know the story. I was the story.
That's exactly what he says. But you're right. I think it's important. They need to read it and stay true to it. And I like when actors stand up for themselves, like when Henry Cavill thought The Witcher was getting too far off the tracks, and he's just like, and unless you're gonna be more book accurate, I'm out. This isn't what I signed up for. I think, you know, that's why it is crucial that everybody has a respect for the source material, because everybody can be like, wait a second, let's get this back on tracks here. And casting's huge. That makes me think, do you think the series needs an A-lister right off the bat to kind of draw attention, or do you think it's fine, like just starting all fresh with new people?
I think having 1 or 2 in there, not like in the major roles, or I think if you were to have 1 in there, like this is a major role, but not for long, is having someone good play Kelsier.
Yes. You know who my favorite fan cast for that is?
Hugh Jackman.
No. Finnick from Hunger Games.
That would be a really good one. I could also see the guy, I can't ever remember his name, but the guy that plays Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones.
He'd be good. But I do imagine him more like in his 30s.
Kelsier?
Yeah.
I guess we see a age range from him in Game of Thrones. He's probably too old now.
He's probably like 50. But yeah, you're right. I'm trying to think of blonde people, but yeah, I like Finnick, man. He'd be good. He'd be perfect age right now.
What's the actor's actual name?
Let me see what the actor's name is.
Finnick Odair?
Finnick Odair. Sam Claflin.
Yeah, so Sam Claflin could be a good Kelsier. I have heard that Hugh
Hugh
Jackman,
Jackman. Did you say Hugh Jackman? He's like 70.
but I heard that he's like Brandon Sanderson's favorite actor, and that Brandon Sanderson just loves what's that show called? The Greatest Showman.
Oh, really?
And who do you think that they could get him to play in Mistborn or in Stormlight?
He should play Dalinar.
I always just imagine Dalinar as Sean Bean.
Oh, Sean Bean. Yeah, he'd be good. But Dalinar has like black hair, you know?
They're also all Asian, so we're all
Oh,
out of
hey, they're not Asian Asian. They're like Asian inspired. They're not white. They're not, they're like Korean, they're not a specific race. They're Rosharans.
in Mistborn. Maybe he could be Straff Venture. That's probably the right age.
That'd be good. Or he could be the Lord Ruler.
Yeah, the Lord Ruler that looks young forever, no matter how much he ages.
Yeah. But he's not a big enough part. What about one of the Mistings in the crew? Well, he could be 10 soon.
Be a dog. I was thinking maybe Breeze.
Yeah, that'd be good. Marsh, too old.
And he's probably too old. If whatever the actor's name is that plays Jaime Lannister is too old for Kelsier, then Hugh Jackman's definitely too old for Marsh.
Yeah, that's true. I just don't know enough actors, man. But I do think it's important that they get an A-lister or two. So casting will be crucial. And, just I hope they can I hope they can represent the powers well visually.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if they'll show us the blue lines that Mistborn see when they push and pull.
I think we'll get like a view from their eyes a little bit, but I think for like action scenes, we're not really gonna see them. We'll
Yeah.
just like kind of see what they see briefly.
Yeah. Vin will be an important casting, obviously. I mean, I have no idea who could be cast for that.
That'll be a tough one to fill. A lot of big roles to fill. A lot of characters in these books.
Yeah. What about the girl that played, what's her name, X-23 or whatever? Wolverine's little protege?
She's too old now.
Now she's too old, but she would have been great.
Yeah. So we talked about casting. We talked about kind of seeing the powers and just going all in with it. And we know Brandon Sanderson's going to be involved. So we'll at least have a loyal to the source screenplay.
They need the so they need the screenplay before they can even start to think about casting, right?
I don't know how all that works, but that would be my guess. Is they gotta have stuff for them to read.
Have you seen they're making Fablehaven into a movie?
I did see that.
Yeah. It's by Angel Production, so I think it's like a lot smaller budget, but we'll see
I
how
also
that.
saw that Aragon's gonna be on Disney Plus.
Yeah. I want to get those special editions I think it's Broken Binding. They make the dragons look much more realistic.
Maybe one day I can afford more special bindings and better copies of the books that I currently have, other than my collection here in the middle of my Mistborn books and my couple of the
Hey, I
Stormlight
think
books.
you got about $1,000 on that middle shelf.
I have just about. It took years to collect those.
Most of them are gifts too.
Yeah, actually, all of them are.
Oh boy. Well, you want to introduce our next segment?
Sure. So that brings us to our weapon of wisdom, which will be given to us today by Carter. And this segment will be sponsored by Moe's Seafood and Chowder on the Oregon coast. Stop by, see Moe's.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Quote today for the weapon of wisdom is on fear and courage from Vin, and it's in the book Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I've found that when I'm afraid of something, if I just end up doing it, I'm usually not afraid anymore. And it's just kind of straight up actionable courage. It's not poetic, it's practical. It reminds me of, I heard this interview, and it was of an actor talking about when he got into the acting industry. He was talking to this veteran actor, and he's like, how do you like not get nervous before a scene? And the veteran actor's just like, I just choose not to be. And I like the idea of being able to choose your emotions, and you can't choose your emotions, but you have to feel them. But I like how you can choose how you can feel sometimes, if that makes sense. Like whenever I am anxious for something or am afraid of something, if I just mentally just kind of refocus a second and say, I am going to choose not to be afraid of that or anxious about that, it usually works for me actually. And I've been working on that recently is, choosing to be patient or choosing to feel a certain way or choosing to be happy, because a lot of the times your emotions are a choice if you want them to be. So Vin, I've found that when I'm afraid of something, I just end up doing it. I'm usually not afraid anymore. So when you're afraid of something, just do it. And because usually when you're afraid of something, it's something that's going to make you better or grow. And once you do it, it becomes less scary. So that's my weapon of wisdom for you. A lot of rambling, probably didn't make sense, but maybe you found something in it.
I like it. Thank you for sharing that. I just hope it applies to my fear of heights because no matter how many times I've conquered it, I'm still afraid of it.
Well, I think we determined that your fear of heights is genetic.
Well, Brotagonists, that brings us to the end of our show today. Just to review, we uh, had a protagonist book breakdown of Mistborn, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, and it received a protagonist official ranking of 8.6. Very solid score for a very solid book, and it only gets better from there. We then did a mythic matchup between Marsh from the Mistborn series and Moash from the Stormlight Archive. We then went to some blind rankings where I blind ranked some Brandon Sanderson books that Carter gave to me. And finally, we ended with a Watchtower review where we discussed how to make the future adaptation of the Mistborn trilogy as good as possible. And then that brought us to our weapon of wisdom given to us today about conquering fear from Carter. And Protagonist Nation, we will leave you with that. Like and subscribe. Thank you for following us. Please share us with your friends, and we love you.
See you at the next episode, Protagonists. Thank you.